Well, good morning. We're going to engrave on one of Richard's Vega flanges today, and I just want to show the process of what I do. I have a Lazy Susan on top of a stand that I can spin so that I can cut the work. So let's get started here. Let me get up here close and personal. I'm using two different tools to engrave this today. I have standard hand engravers. As you can see, these are palm tools. I hold them in my palm, and then I can cut the work with them. I've already got them nice and sharp. Well, it was nice and sharp till it fell. Let's see. Yep, didn't land on the tip. Alright, so now what we're going to do is let me just buff this a little bit. I have my master, which I've already engraved. I have a right and I have a left. So what I'm going to do now is, let me move these tools out of the way, move that. Can you see? Yep, we can see that. And I've had this little ball of engraver's wax for 40-something years. And all we do is just put a little coating by rubbing it onto or rolling it onto the master, and it just puts a little sheen of wax onto that master. Now I need to transfer that, and I have a piece of clear plastic. It's a little plastic sheet and a burnisher. And what I do is I just lay it on top. Make sure there's nothing on there. I lay it on top and I burnish across it. Now the master I'd engraved at the beginning of the project. I did a series of drawings. And this was the set that Richard decided he'd like. And so then I transferred that by scratching it onto another piece of plastic and then rolling it, transferring it onto my master, and then I engraved the master. Put that aside. Now I have I don't know if you can see this, but I have that wax transferred onto this plastic. Now I'm just going to line it up, and then I burnish it again. And that transfers the wax onto the piece that I'm going to engrave. There, now can you see that on there? It's a little hard to see. There it is. But I can see it well enough to engrave it. So I have 2 points. One that's a little wider than the other. And I'm going to just start engraving. Can you see? Hopefully my head ain't going to get in the way here. And I just turn the work into the tool. And it's just a process of continuing to follow the design. It's my own design. I designed it. I drew it out. I created it and refined it to get it to a point where I felt it had a certain amount of interesting look to it. Something that would be kind of delicate. It's based on acanthus leaf flowers. They're a Mediterranean flower, or greenery I should say, that kind of unfolds. And they have these nice scrolling look to it. Now the amount of hand pressure that I'm using is not a lot, but you have to keep it steady and even, and that's the hard part. Is once you start to cut, you want to keep the same amount of hand pressure on it. And I try to, it's a wriggle cut, W-R-I-G-G-L-E, wriggle cut. It's an ornamental engraving cut that was developed, a couple of hundred years ago or so, for engraving on guns in steel. Now, I've never engraved a gun. My hand strength and the amount of engraving that I do only allows me to do brass and softer metals. Steel takes a little more hand strength than what I can develop for the amount of engraving that I do. If I was doing this every day, then I would probably develop the hand strength to allow me to engrave on steel. But I don't engrave on steel. I tried some sample pieces one time, but I found it to be a little bit too hard to do. So I don't do steel. But I do just fine with brass. Now it's almost like illustrating on paper what I'm doing here, except you're watching your engraving, you're watching your tool, you're watching the pattern underneath, but you still take some liberties with it. To try to get everything just so. Now, right now I'm just engraving the outline of all the elements within this particular design. And as soon as I get this done, we'll get into the detail of the engraving, and I'll put that on a separate video because of the length of time that these take to do. These rounded curves are the most difficult things to cut. So you need to be able to turn the work into the tool and keep that nice even pressure on there, which is fatiguing after a while. I can only do about 4 of these in a day. Total time to do one flange is about 20 minutes, and if you can picture yourself doing a partial push-up for 20 minutes, just holding yourself up in the air for 20 minutes, that's about the amount of strength that it takes to push this tool. So it does get fatiguing. I can do about 4 of them in a day. I'd like to be able to do more so I can get the project done faster, but when your hands get tired, you can't maintain the depth of the cut, because that's what you're pushing. You're pushing into the metal. You see, I just had a little slip there. I slipped off the edge, but it didn't do any damage to the piece because it's on that final little curve right there. Okay, that's the basic part of the design now is engraved in there. And now I'm going to do video 2, which will be the detail.